This, ladies and gentlemen, could be a brand new opening to your eyeballs, maybe, but I want you to judge for yourselves. But before I show you the main new opening recommendation that I have for you guys, let me show you a little trap that may arise from the center game, which is the opening you're seeing on the board right now, where you sacrifice your D pawn on move 2 so that after black takes, you don't take back immediately but play bishop c4. Oops, the Lichess database again. I just want to be showing you the top played moves even in today's video. So you can see black plays knight to c6, holding on to their d4 pawn. And now instead of playing knight to f3, you simply go knight e2. Because later on you have intentions of playing pawn to f4 and castle short if you want. And once again you can see with your own eyeballs, bishop c5 is what everybody plays. And that's what we want, because now it is time to show your opponent why you are a Casper sub by going pawn to c3. The whole idea is to open up the d file, and you also want to develop your queen's knight with tempo. Now, this is why you can shake your opponent's eyeballs by simply sacrificing your bishop on f7. That's bishop takes f7 check. Come on. The whole idea is to make black lose his right to castle after king takes f7, and then you go queen d5 check. And they mostly go back to e8, and now before taking the bishop, you go queen h5 check first, provoking a weakness on the king side after pawn to g6, and then that's when you take the bishop. Even if they take your b2 pawn, you will simply take back with a bishop and you have more and more open lines. Your pieces will develop swiftly, and you can even castle short here. The Stockfish thinks white has a slight advantage and a great initiative to win this game, but this is not the main area of our meet in today's study. I just wanted you guys to get familiar with this position because we are going to be using it in today's short lesson, and that'll be good for your toes as well as your eyeballs. So yesterday I was trying to invent a new opening which looks like the Brazilian defense. Let me show you how the Brazilian defense goes before I show you what I was doing with white pieces. So we play the Brazilian defense, obviously with black pieces. This is where white starts with e4, then we go e5, and after knight to f3, then we surprise our opponents by going queen e7. Yes, deliberately blocking our dark squared bishop, and this is not a dubious opening, you guys. You can check even in the Masters database. Grandmasters and super grandmasters have played this defense before with much success. And if you want to know more about this defense and how simple and great it is, especially for beginners and intermediate level players, you can check my Brazilian defense video that has popped up in the card above. Quite alright, the first idea is to get rid of white's light squared bishop as quickly as we can. After takes, now we can develop our pawn on c6, controlling the d5 and the b5 square after white plays knight c3. Develop our dark squared bishop, play pawn to h6 before developing our king's knight, and develop our queen's knight on d7, and it will be up to us to choose where we want to castle. So we want to be doing the same thing even with white pieces. Where we develop our queen on e2, there are a lot of traps that you may find interesting. Let's see. So this is where you start with e4, and then black plays e5, and now you play bishop c4. Yeah, this is the bishop's opening, and you can see in the Lichess database the top played move is knight to f6 because your pawn on e4 is undefended. But instead of playing knight c3, knight f3, pawn to d3, or even pawn to f4 in this position, you defend your e4 pawn right away with queen e2. And guys, this to me looks like the improved Brazilian defense now with white pieces, because this time we haven't blocked our bishop. Our bishop is already out, so that's a plus. So before I show you some interesting traps, here are the reasons for playing queen e2 on move 3. First of all, to immediately protect the e4 pawn, and secondly, we are telling black that we are not interested in developing our queen's knight on c3. The c3 square is reserved for our c2 pawn, and our queen's knight will be developed on d2. This also prepares for a quick long side castle if need be, because that's what I like doing. And number 4, just to avoid an early queen exchange that may possibly happen if the d file is open. We see that in most of the cases. So having known the main ideas of this queen e2 move, now we can continue with some dirty traps, and then we will conclude with a more stable way of playing this opening. So the top played move for black is knight c6, as you can see, then bishop c5, and thirdly, pawn to d5. So let's start with the worst. pawn to d5 is something that you won't see many people playing because it's just risky. Let me show you how. You can simply take that pawn almost for free, and if knight takes d5, this is even worse because this will make you be up a pawn for nothing right in the opening stage, you guys. Or you can first of all go knight c3. I like this pawn structure where I have doubled pawns along the c file. My c3 pawn is controlling the d4 square and the b4 square, and still I'm attacking the e5 pawn. If knight c6 or bishop d6, whatever, my simple plan is to play bishop e3 and castle long. And now I have a clear winning strategy, you guys. I'll just focus playing the rest of my game on the king side. For example, after knight c6, the next thing to think of is how I can develop my king's knight from g1 to g5. You guys, this is a simple opening to try out even in tournaments if you have no better opening repertoire. So let's look at something else that black can do. After e4, e5, bishop c4, knight f6, and queen e2. So instead of pawn to d5, what if black plays the second most played move, bishop c5? Now this is where that trap, which I showed you in the introduction of this video, becomes useful. We have two options, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, we can play normally with knight to f3, which is boring to me. Yeah, black plays d6, which is what they do. And then since your queen is developed on e2, you don't think of playing knight c3, you guys. Be patient. The c3 square is reserved for our c2 pawn. The castle short, that's the top played move. You go d3. This is the pawn structure that we have in the Ruy Lopez in most cases, and also in the Italian game. Bishop g4, you go h3. And just like what we do in the Italian game, you can even start a kingside pawn storm right away. You go bishop g5 because black's dark squared bishop cannot go back to unpin the knight. So that's why bishop g5 is good. They go knight bd7, that's the top played move. And then you go knight h4. You want to plant your knight on the juicy f5 square. That's our main goal in the Italian game and the Spanish opening. And the Ruy Lopez, c6. Well, if you want, you can take that bishop, double up the pawns, go pawn to a4 to stop b5. You develop your queen's knight and castle long, and the h pawn will be advanced up to whatever. So this is a more standard way of playing this opening, especially in tournaments. But let me show you something very fun, you guys, because that's just how crazy my mind is. Let's go. So after you play queen e2 and black plays the second most played move, bishop c5, instead of developing your knight to f3, I want you to try out this move, pawn to f4. After pawn to f4, if e takes f4, the idea is to go e5. And see, you guys, the top played move is knight g8, which is very bad. I mean, after all, black doesn't have many good options, by the way. They'll play knight g8, and this is when you can simply shake your opponent's eyeballs by going bishop takes f7 check. You make them lose their right to castle, and then you go queen c4 check, and you can see the top played move is d5. Yeah, because they are confused, forgetting that you can simply take with ampersand, and as check. On the next move, you're going to win the bishop. If they take with a queen, don't feel shy to exchange queens, because in this position is like plus 1.9 according to Stockfish, and you are winning easily. You just continue targeting the undefended pawns. If g5, you immediately start the minority attack. You know this already. h6, h takes g5, and there's nothing black can do to defend his f4 pawn. This is clearly winning for white. Let's look at something else, you guys. After you play pawn to e5, black doesn't necessarily have to play knight g8 here. The best they can do is to castle short, betting you to take on f6 so that they can play rook e8, pinning your queen to the king. But you don't have to take on f6 anyways. You go d4, paving way for your dark squared bishop. Yeah, that's a pawn sacrifice, but a temporary one, because after bishop takes d4, you have all the time to take on f4, but black may play bishop takes b2 and end up winning your rook on a1. That's why we start with knight to f3. First of all, chasing this bishop, bishop e3 will be a terrible blunder because that'll hang the knight on f6. So black has to play something like bishop b6 in this position, and that's when you can now take the f4 pawn. You continue developing your pieces as highlighted, and here I can just play pawn to g3. I don't mind black taking my dark squared bishop because that will help me open up my g file for my king's rook. Of course, I have to make sure that I don't hang my rook. Anyways, so once again, after bishop c5, just remember to go pawn to f4 instead of knight to f3. We saw what happens if black takes on f4. Yeah, you just go e5. But hey, what if they play pawn to d6, which is the top played move, d6? Well, now position is just equal. You just keep it so simple, simplify the game, and go knight to f3 this time, targeting the e5 pawn, so they will defend it, which is kind of a mistake by the way, because this gives you time once again to sacrifice your bishop on f7 with check, and after king takes, making black lose his right to castle. Again, you do the same thing that I just showed you. For example, bishop e6, you go knight g5 check, cause on the next move, you're going to win the light squared bishop, black's light squared bishop, and let's say queen g8. Black thinks he is pinning your knight to the queen, but you have queen takes bishop, or even better, queen b3, and on the next move, you're going to give a check on g3 and rescue your knight. Anyways, instead of black blocking your check with bishop e6, let's say they play king e8, well, you can just go ahead and take the free bishop. If knight takes e4, attacking your queen, you can simply go queen e3, attacking the knight, and on the next move, you'll be able to win back your pawn. Knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and once again, don't be afraid of exchanging your queens. After you castle short, position is like 2.5 according to Stockfish, not to mention that you are just up a pawn in this position. This is clearly winning for white, alright? So again, we looked at e takes f4 and pawn to d6. What if black plays knight c6 defending the e5 pawn? Another purpose of knight to c6 is knight d4, maybe in the near future. So that's why you have to play knight to f3, stopping knight d4. So after knight to f3, they'll go pawn to d6. That's what they all do, paving way for their light squared bishop. And once again, you just go ahead and simplify the game and see why I showed you that bishop trap in the introduction of this video. Because I wanted you to get used to this bishop sack where you make black lose his right to castle. And once again, you already know what to do, you guys. We just looked at this a few seconds ago. Anyways, so that's just what may happen if black plays knight c6 on move 4. Again, you remember to go knight to f3 and simplify the game. Anyways, now that you have an idea on how to sack your bishop on f7 after black plays bishop c5, this time they may be clever enough to play the top played move. You can see knight c6. What do you do against this? Well, remember again, knight c6 doesn't just defend the e5 pawn. Black also intends to play knight d4 maybe in the near future. That's why you play pawn to c3, or even better, knight to f3. We are not intending to castle short anytime soon, by the way, in this line. And again, the top played move is bishop c5. As you can see, they want to castle short as soon as they can. And this is why you can start playing slow chess, you guys. That's why I recommend this for classical games as well. You can try this in tournaments. You go pawn to c3. Once again, pawn to d5 fails due to the weak pawn on e5. For example, after e takes d5, knight takes d5, we can simply go pawn to d4. Black's pawn on e5 is pinned to the king, so they can't take us. If bishop b6, now you go knight takes e5, and see how black cannot even take back on e5 because that will hang a piece. For example, queen e7, we can just take the free knight and we are simply winning in this position. I mean, even if black plays knight e7, at least we can walk away with a pawn on g7. This is very bad for black, you guys. So black doesn't have to do this. I mean, taking on e5 after knight takes e5. Maybe they can try to castle short, but we can just take on c6. And after pawn takes, we castle short as well. Life is good. So once again, after black plays knight c6, just remember to go knight to f3. And after bishop c5, you play pawn to c3. And we just looked at why you shouldn't be scared of pawn to d5 from today onwards. So you're going to see them playing pawn to d6, by the way. And I want you to picture this position. From here, you will only start playing prophylactic moves or waiting moves that are aimed at building a great position, not attacking moves. Think of slow moves like pawn to h3, pawn to a3, or pawn to a4. You're just building your position. That's why you guys don't improve in most cases, because you just want to be attacking. You only know two things: attacking and defending. There's time for everything. Time for attacking, time for defending, time for building a great position, and time for sleeping, time for dating, and time for breaking up. Anyways, after d6, you can play pawn to a4. If black plays something like bishop g4, you have pawn to b4 and pawn to a5, which will trap the dark squared bishop. So that's why we play pawn to a4. If they play a5, now you go pawn to h3, stopping bishop g4 or knight g4. castle shot by black. I mean, you even have an option to go pawn to g4 and g5 right away. A very common idea in the Italian game, you guys. But you can try to be solid if you want. Pawn to d3. If they go bishop e6, and this is the line that you guys have to get used to, because you are going to be seeing this line from time to time. This is what people play in real tournaments. Bishop e6 equals knight d2. You want to take on c4 with your queen's knight. So you go knight d2. And sometimes what I like doing, after they take the bishop, I just take with my pawn. Because now my center is super strong, you guys. Black cannot play knight b4 or knight d4. That's one. My c pawn and my e pawn are both controlling the d5 square. That's two. And I have a clear plan of developing my queen's knight to the king side through f1, g3, and later on putting it on f5. My dark squared bishop will be traded with black's dark squared bishop on e3. The game is over. After black plays bishop e6 and then you go knight d2, if they take your bishop, you don't always have to take with your pawn. Just go knight takes c4 to simplify the game. Once again, d5 is not good because of knight c takes e5. And after knight takes e5, I mean, you just won a pawn, you guys. You now start simplifying the game. And on the next move, you are going to win this game so easily. Just ensure that you don't blunder any piece. That's all. So this is a little opening repertoire that I had for you guys today. If at all you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because that's what encourages me to do more of these stuffs. And also check out my courses at www.kasperchess.com. I just updated my website. Now it's looking a little bit clean and more professional. You can check it out. I like the dark theme. You can also join me on Patreon, where I post more detailed studies, and also sign up for my free masterclass. Thank you for watching my video once again. Until next time, bye bye.